What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of For the Love of the Game. If you're listening now, please subscribe to the Muscle Media Network on YouTube. Leave us a comment, share it with a video, ring the bell so that you get the notifications from the channel. As always, this episode is brought to you by Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel. Train hard, die strong. Thanks again to Chris for supporting the channel. And today we are joined by a very special guest, a good friend of mine, and a new IFBB Pro, kind of wild to say. My good friend, Mr. Gary G6 Turner. Gary, what's up, buddy? How are you?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. It's good. It's good to get you on the show finally. Tommy and I have been doing this for over a year now. We've talked about it privately, probably 100 times, having you on the podcast. And then we were kind of just holding out and waiting to see if you ever got that damn pro card. And once you did, we were like, Tommy signed off on it. And he was like, all right, you can have him on.
Finally.
Yeah. But no better circumstance to have you onto the show for the first time after. And, you know, anybody that follows bodybuilding has probably seen you kind of did the rounds a little bit, went around and got to do a little bit of the victory tour on different podcasts and shows talking about it. So tell us about it. Let's start with the prep. Obviously, anybody that's followed bodybuilding for the last 10 years knows you're one of the most committed people to bodybuilding through and through. I've said it 100 times publicly, privately. You were really the first example of a professional bodybuilder that I got to be around every day. And that was before you ever had the title. We at Animal, we worked together. And, we're exposed and around to the biggest and best names in bodybuilding. I mean, Derek Lunsford, Evan Centopani, and name it. All these guys were around them all the time. And I would tell people you were the most committed person that I've seen. Traveling with your meals, just relentless with the execution. So, to see it all pay off for you and finish with a pro card was very cool. So tell us about the prep. What was different about it? What was different about it this year compared to maybe the last 3 or 4 goes at it? And we'll just let it go from there.
Yeah. Well, this was the first year that I prepped with Dom Cardone. So I was with Dave Palumbo for 3 preps before that, starting with the 2020 season up through 2022. I was good, but never great. I was kind of competing in the super heavy category at that for those years, and it was always I was there, but not quite there, and that was at the open level. So I would say 33, 34 with those preps. So my best placing was 5th at the 2021 USAs. I took 8th at the 2021 North Americans. So I just wasn't quite there. There was always just a couple guys that not only were they genetically better than me, but I wasn't fully conditioned where you could even make a case for it. It kind of just like left the door open. So I just felt that I needed a change. And what I decided on, it was between Dom and another coach. And it just happened to be very oddly and ironically, Dom and I have talked in DMs, just in passing. We weren't even friends or anything like that. We just knew each other for years. And we kind of got into a conversation. He just said, listen, I'm tired of seeing you show up not at your best. I know that I can get you at your best. And I know that, we're going to be a Masters this year, that you could get a pro card. And, he sent that in a voice message actually to me. And that was like right then and there. Actually, my wife overheard it and said, hire him. That was the first person that I ever had that really truly believed, like from the jump, that I could be the dude to do it. I felt always that I was with past coaches that I was trying to prove to them that I was like, to be taken seriously. And it's not that they weren't, everybody was providing a service and doing the best they can and everything like that. They just, I was never the guy that you can make guarantees for. Oh, this guy's going to be, he's definitely going to do it or something like that. And like Dom always had like forward positivity and like really had belief. And that was like kind of what I ran on the whole time. Was there was a few times during his prep, Dom got my head out of my ass and was like, you are beyond there. He goes, you just can't see it because your head's all cloudy right now. So we did probably about 6 or 7 months off season. And then we got into prep around February, and then we did the Lehigh. Dom assured me that I was going to dominate that. I didn't know how it was going to, go. I knew I would do well. I ended up winning 2 overalls there, the Masters and the Open overall. That was my first Open overall. So that was a great milestone to hit. Because I've had a few class wins. And it was always good to like obviously win your class, but I was never like the last man standing at a show. There was always some middleweight or light heavyweight with great shape, that like took me out. And it was just like, it was all great to win the class, but finally that was the big one, was the Open overall. And when I sent Dom the results, because he wasn't there, he was like, I'm not surprised. That was his first thing, is I'm not surprised. I knew this was going to happen. And he goes, and you're going to be better for the universe. So we had 5 weeks between the universe after that. And, things got even crazier, with the look and everything like that. Right after that, actually, Dom told me, he goes, I'm going to come to your show. He goes, I got another client there. You guys want to split it? I'm like, absolutely. And I never had a coach with me at a show before. This is my 18th show. I've never, since competing in 2010, had a coach backstage or even like dial me in person. So like, I was really excited about that. I felt really comfortable with that. I tell this story because a lot of these young guys that are coming up, they have like local coaches, and their coaches are at these shows, because they're local to the area, but they think that's the standard. And that's not really the standard. We went through bodybuilding with pictures, or like, it was just different. Like you just hoped that they saw what you were showing in that picture. You had to find the Airbnb perfect lighting. And like, man, I look better than this in person. I tell you, I look better than this in person. And the coach never believes that. It always like, yeah, right, whatever. And it's like, so I don't even have many sets of pictures at the Airbnb, because Dom was just looking at me between each meal going, all right, you're going to eat this. So I didn't take photos with that. I took photos at the gym at Signature, like in our last final pump ups, which when I started seeing those pictures, that's when I started to realize, man, it's going to take a freak of nature to really derail me at this point. Cause I don't remember pictures ever looking like this, like the day before the show. And, but yeah, like it was great to have him backstage. I mean, he was the one who was keeping me calm. We're standing in line. He goes, don't pump up yet. He goes, all right, lightly. He just told me how to breathe. He by the time of pre-judging, I asked him, I said, do you see anybody that like, he goes, I already looked at everybody in line. He goes, they don't look like you. He goes, they're all, he goes, just do your thing out there. You're fine. He goes, I'm already past where your head's at. I've already checked out everybody standing in this line. They're out of shape. Whether he was actually meant that, or he's just trying to lie to me to keep my head screwed on straight, so I was confident. But it worked out. And then I got up there, and they moved me to I couldn't tell at the time when I was on stage, because I didn't know how many guys were lined up. I knew I got moved sort of near the middle, but I didn't know if it was a split center 6, or if there was 7 guys or 5 guys, and I was next to the middle guy. So we hit our poses, we didn't move. And then I came off, and I knew that like I was top 3 at that point, and I was all happy. And one of she just turned pro in female bodybuilding, actually Akeem Williams' ex-girlfriend Taylor, like jumped on me backstage, and she's like, that was awesome. When did you learn how to hit a vacuum? And I'm like, and I was like still like kind of out of breath, and I was like, was I next to the center? I'm like, do you think I got it? She goes, and then Shane Hughley walked up next. He goes, dude, you had every pose. He goes, you were split center, and he goes, you had every pose. And that's when it really started to sink in for me. I got a little emotional at that point, because then I started seeing pictures, and it was like, there was no case to be made of the other guy next to me. I was winning almost all the poses, conditioning. And so that's when it was like really sunk in. That was an emotional moment. And then we went back, and it was a very like calm afternoon. I mean, we was just like kind of very like just chilled out. I took a nap. There was no real like, I still had like all the confidence in the world. Like I felt when I was going to finals that I'm going to collect my pro card now. I'm just going to go and obtain it there. And it wasn't until I got online that I started to get a little nervous. The only reason I got nervous is because we've seen guys be in the center, and then some funny business happened. And I knew I'd never been this close before, and I didn't want to end up in second. Oh, I'd have to do it again. And I was like, if I'm this close, I wanted to get it. And so that's the only reason that I felt a little bit of nerves. So I was trying to because I knew all the expediters, because it was in New Jersey. So I knew that they probably knew, and I was trying to read them, or say leading questions, and knew they were keeping a poker face. They were so they were like, whatever happens, happens. And I'm like, shit, man, do they think I'm in second and like trying to like let me down easy so I'm not disappointed? And then after I got off, I'm like, did you guys know? Like, yeah, we fucking knew. We can't say anything. And then we wouldn't ruin that moment for you. I'm like, all right, that makes sense now. But yeah, it was really good. I mean, you were the first person to say backstage that this the fact that it happened in New Jersey with everybody, the family, the friends, everybody, the whole thing, the crowd going nuts, how it erupted. I mean, it could have happened in Vegas and it would have been just me and my wife, and that would have been cool to win it. It would have been huge, but it would have been not the same explosion. Like I said, my family wouldn't have been there for all that. So like it's almost like you had to like take those beatings and wait it out just till the time was right. And and it did work out. So like that was just thinking about how like the stars aligned like that was an emotional moment for me. So, it was a good day.
Yeah, it was wild to be there, man. It did feel like it kind of all aligned just for that moment to happen. I mean, I'd seen everything that you put into it. And, going out to Vegas a couple times, going out to Pittsburgh a couple times. It's limited on who's going. Like you said, it's just you and Melissa a couple times. Your parents maybe can't make it, or, not as many of your friends. Man, there were entire packs and groups of different sections of the audience that were screaming, losing their mind for you. So it was cool to see, man. I don't think anybody was as loud as Melissa. I think everyone could feel like this like primal scream from her. Like she has put as much into this over the
Yeah.
past 15 years as you have.
She almost dropped the camera when the freaking thing, because not only that, we had the guards coming flying after her. She's
Yeah,
dropping
yeah,
the camera. She's trying to hold it up. The voice that I heard though, Dom was screaming like crazy with each pose. Like,
yeah.
and those were the cues that he was yelling was the cues that he was yelling in posing practice, like just a few hours before. Because we worked on a last minute. His buddy, who's a posing coach out in Vegas, got on a the morning before on a FaceTime with me, and we just tweaked up a few things. So those tweaks, like scooping the back pec and the side chest, that I was hearing Dom scream that, or he goes, hear him vacuum, vacuum, So that was like I was like listening to his cues. I always try to like lock in with one person in the crowd, because then you can space out. You don't have to like look around or like figuring that you're ruining your breathing or something like that. So I try to like space out and just like focus on one person in the dead center, and then I kind of just like let my body go at that point. But yeah, Melissa was going. That was a 15 years of intensity, and you think about all the times, like think about when you guys go to shows for friends and they don't do well. It's like, yeah, it's upsetting, but it's also like I always feel like, not that it's a waste of time, but it's like it's just so much better when your person wins, because you coming there, spending all that money, it was worth it. So like think about all the times that she's like come out and like I've gotten whooped. You know what I mean? We 2020 North Americans. We went out to fucking Pittsburgh and I was third call out, and we just watched me get my teeth kicked in the middle of the pandemic, and it was like, dude, what are we doing out here? That was my first pro qualifier. So we're the heavyweights stood up. There was 36 in the middle of a tent outside in
Yeah,
a
that was
parking lot.
outside, right?
In a
Yeah.
parking lot. And like, dude, that was, I mean, there's been like shows like that early on and stuff like that where it was like, what the fuck, man? But it's just, it's tough. I mean, I deal with it with wrestling and stuff. If you go out to like a tournament, the first thing you hope is that your kid doesn't lose in 2 matches and you just drove out there for nothing. So it's like a tough concept. But that's why that intensity comes through with the people that were, there that whole time.
Yeah, it was the same for me, man. I didn't have a voice by the end of the situation. Like when you came out after winning and like, we're all standing there for you. I didn't really have much of a voice left. I was there with one client and I'm there screaming for you, and I didn't have much of a voice left. So I get it. A couple of the things that you mentioned, like just about Dom, because you didn't even really mention like X's and O's of bodybuilding. Pretty much everything you talked about in terms of the difference with Dom was all mindset, was all confidence, mindset. So I'm curious, go into it in as much detail as you're comfortable
Yeah.
with, but what are the differences? What differences like did Dom implement with you in the
Mm.
prep, other than just the mindset stuff? Like,
Mhm.
were there
Yeah.
tangible X's and O's in bodybuilding that you felt like, man, this guy really has a grasp on what we're doing here?
Yeah. Well, for one, like all those, some coaches have massive refeeds or, burger and fry refeeds. I mean, we really didn't get that. Tommy also trains with Dom, so he understands the same concept as, you might get a cheat meal like every Saturday in the off season. That's just to keep you sane because he understands the value of family as well and going out with them. But like when it's prep time, and you don't get that anymore. And you suddenly, so all the times that the cheat meals were very few and far between. And when I say cheat meals, like, burger, fries, and a slice of cake is like his go-to, but it's like we're talking about like maybe sometimes 6 weeks between it. I didn't have one for like 6 or 7 weeks, and then he somehow gave it to me at 10 days out. He told me to go eat, and then I exploded after that. So that's when it's needed. So he was really like, going like, he was looking at every set of pictures. He was assessing what was going on. Some of these coaches, they don't, and it's just like, send me the pictures. Okay, your weight dropped too. All right, let's stay the same. You're going good. But he was actually looking, he goes, no, you're flat. He goes, I want you flat now. He would always explain, I want you flat. So then when we went into the carb up, conditioning was king. Do I think, like, I was the lightest with Dom. I weighed in at 215 on, was it Friday afternoon? That was the lightest that I've been since 2017. In 2021, when I took fifth at the USA's, I was 237 on stage. And from the front, I was real good. I'm always like that. From the back, I wasn't there. So we had to make sure if I was going to win this class, I had to be crazy. And my front was crazy for weeks, maybe months even, but we still had to dig in the back. And unfortunately, their weight's going to come down. We didn't pay any really attention to it. And I kind of embraced the low body weight. Like it was almost like a badge of honor at some point. I'm like, dude, I'm 219 right now, but I know that as it goes down, I look crazier. And I try to tell like these bodybuilders who use the one quote, this look plus 10 more pounds and I'll be great. I was like, you are setting yourself up to be so fucking fat in your next prep because you're putting yourself in there. And all these guys think if they're lighter the next prep, that all of a sudden their off season was a waste of time. And that's not true. Just to explain, my weight went down, but I was also twice as conditioned. And was I smaller? Like, yeah, I looked a little bit smaller than I've looked when I was full blown at the USA's. But if I had looked how I looked at the USA's, I would have took fifth. So choose whatever one you want. The only reason that I got the look I got at the Universe was because I was drastically more conditioned. Those guys were good, but I was better. So if I was anywhere like them, they all had better shape than me. The guy in third place should have killed all of us. He turned pro in the 40s. But the only reason that he didn't get the nod is because when every shot, there was a lot of shit happening, my physique. And so Dom, that was first and foremost, so we didn't like anytime the weight dropped, Dom wasn't like, okay, you got to go eat, so there wasn't all this stuff. He adjusted the plan a lot. Sometimes there was more food. Sometimes there was you push down. It wasn't as high in fat as it's been in the past, so there wasn't a lot of added fats. Of course, like the pre-workout meal had a serving of fat in there so that it sustained the blood sugar as you got through the training. Training was only 4 days a week. I asked for a fifth day. He said no. He said this is working and we're staying with it. So on the off days was much lower calories. Those days sucked because you were even hungrier than your training day, which you were already hungry. And I always say to people, I'm like, listen, if you looked at my diet, you would say this is a lot of food. It didn't feel like it because my metabolism was out of this world and you know how hungry you get during prep. But it wasn't like I was eating like chicken and greens for every meal. It wasn't a prep like that. There was a lot of food by definition of it. There was a few things that we did differently, in drug protocols. I cut my test at the end, like far.
At what point?
4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Oh shit.
So you run with that, and everybody. I think Americans are completely obsessed with tests, and I'm not saying don't use it in the off season. Of course, it's great in the off season, but it also could hold water. I think that esters matter. I think propionate over sip. These guys just don't want to incorporate that, so that they say, nah, sip doesn't really do it. I'm like, yeah, but do you look like Andreas Munzer up there? No, then you have improvements to make, and this is a factor. So I always, I did see a difference with that, in terms of that. But
Are
it
you
wasn't
pulling
really
growth too? Did you pull growth that far out?
10 days.
Okay.
But to give you an idea, I mean, I used more Serostim this year than with Palumbo, and I was much bigger with Palumbo. So it really goes to show you what you're eating and how you're doing that. It really comes down to it. Cardio was not high, and I'm sure that this isn't like, if you're watching this isn't like a Dom Cardone does not make his guys do a lot of cardio. I'm sure he has clients that he cranks with cardio when it's needed. I only went to 30 minutes for most of my prep. The key is, and I try to tell people also, is your cardio is not just do cardio. It is a training session. You have to stay within the parameters that are given to you. Mine was 120 to 130 beats per minute, which means whatever machine you have to do to get that, then make that happen. I watch these guys on the treadmill walk and talk, and I'm like, I used to do that, but my heart rate would only be like 103. That's not optimal. I might not even be doing much. So when I really focused on, going 120 to 130, I would use an elliptical sometimes to get that up. And then you realize, shit, man, I'm drenched after 30. That's cardio. So I feel like that really had a factor in when you're getting your conditioning in line, but it didn't have to be high. I do much more now just so I can eat at the diner often.
I think the thing with Dom is he keeps cardio at 6 days a week in the off season too. So
yeah,
it's not like a shock when you're in prep. Like you go from not doing it to all of a sudden doing it. Like it's in there year round.
Mm-hmm.
Same with me. I think I did a couple weeks of 30 minutes, but for the most part, I did 20 minutes all prep.
Yeah, and that's, I can't believe there's still people out there that don't do cardio in their off season. And when they tell me, like, I do four days of 20 minutes, I still don't think, I treat my cardio in the morning like it's taking a multivitamin. It's just something that you do. It really restarts you. It allows that first meal to really get in without, like, I feel like if I don't do cardio and I eat meal one, my stomach's bloated. Like, I don't feel as good when I do that. So, that step counts and adhering to step counts throughout the day. Dom was the first guy who put in a step count for me. Now, Joe knows I was doing steps with Palumbo, like on my own. Like, I would hold myself to a standard in addition to his cardio. But Dom was the first guy who said, listen, and it was towards the end, but he was like, I need you to do 12,000. All right, that's fine. He goes, I'd include your cardio, and then you go 12,000 steps on top of that. So we had that dialed. Then we went to like 8, then 5 in the last week and stuff like that. Basically say, I want you to sit the fuck down and not move around as much in these last couple of days. So he had everything in control. I did not ever feel like I was alone. He really was like, he won an X and O difference. When I carved up, I did not get a meal from Dom in the last week unless he saw a set of pictures. And then when he eventually saw me, so meal 1 would be given after my morning set of pictures. And then he would say, all right, meal 1 and 2, and then I want pictures after that, and then you'll get your next meal. So it was fully customized with that. And that was the first time that I've ever not felt like I was just freewheeling through the last week. And I hope that it looks good on Saturday. And I hope that I dry out, that sort of thing. Another cool thing that I really liked is he went low protein in the last week, in the last half week. Because I've always had a problem on stage, even with eating light food, with stomach distension. It's like, even in a front relaxed, I always wondered, I'm like, man, is my stomach sticking out? Because that's a major problem for a guy with not good shape like me. So when we went low protein, which was lowered inflammation, it brought the stomach, and it felt like my stomach was super glued to my back. It was never even a concern. So that was something that I really, really liked. Going into that, that was a huge difference from what I'm used to.
Yeah, the low protein, he uses it post show too. Like I'm still on, 6 or 7 ounces per meal post USA's, but I know that will go up eventually once I'm full blown off season. But it's nice to it's almost like you're cleansing post show, but you're getting the calories back up. But those, 10 plus ounces of protein, you do that 3 or 4 times a day, like that's a lot of chewing and it's a lot on your gut to break down. So to not have to jump right back into that after a show is good.
Yeah, the gas that protein gives up into your stomach is like, which is funny because I remember my second prep, it was the 2012 Atlantic States. You'll laugh at this. I carved up the morning of the show, I use that in quotes, as I was told by my coach then, with 3 Baconators from Wendy's. I had to eat 3 bacon cheeseburgers, no like other carbs or anything. And craisins. You know those dried raisin things, cranberries? And I'm eating that, and my stomach looked like a fucking like a basketball. It was like an alien stomach. And like, I just, it was somebody helping me. I didn't know any better. This was back way before we had all this stuff here and that. But it was like, and the coach that was helping me was like, you're getting harder by the minute. Yeah, because you know how much salt is in those bacon cheeseburgers? I have no water that I'm drinking. Of course, I'm getting more vascular. It's like almost like it was like the post-show look.
Sweat your tan off.
Yeah, the post-show look that you have, which is like great to look in the mirror, but it's not good for the stage. That's probably what was happening as I was going on the stage. But we didn't know about conditioning back then. Early in those early days, I didn't even know what striated glutes were. I just thought you're supposed to have abs, and that's what I was going for. So I see these young kids who never compete and go, I'm not gonna compete until my glutes are fully shredded. I'm like, we didn't even know what that was, man. Get on the fucking stage and just try your best. I'm like, first off, like these guys come now so prepared because they've read everything on the internet. I'm like, dude, you're not even going to have anybody in your middleweight class at this local show. There's going to be nobody there. What do you think you're going to, the Olympia? So these young guys, they like kind of like, they think the show is going to be like, they have to prepare like an Olympian. And I'm not saying don't try like that, but they also have to realize that you're a novice here, and you should not like shy away. Not get in the batter's box because you think you're not ready. If you strike out, you strike out. But come back again.
So let me ask you now. So it's over. You're retired. Have you had moments or a moment where you've struggled with the idea of it being over? Whether it's like an identity issue, do you feel like you're still a bodybuilder, or, is there a concern for what the future holds for you? I mean, this has been a huge part of your life, bigger even than the average bodybuilder. Like bodybuilding has consumed a great part of your life for a long time. So you're such a big guy in terms of, I'm talking about the mindset of having to push through things and overcoming adversity and all this stuff. So it's going to be I've looked at this as a friend of yours and thought this is going to be a good time to kind of practice what you preach, because this is not going to be easy. Everyone that's loved bodybuilding the way that you have has talked about it afterwards, where it's a major transition period. So how have you been managing that?
Yeah, it's actually been going real well. Because I really like when I was doing this prep, like I was almost like done. Like I was finishing this prep because I was doing it like because I believed that I would win. I wanted to finish out on top. I knew I had a prime opportunity to it, but it wasn't the same guy as when I was like 24, where I was like, I'm starving right now, but dude, I'm going to be Mr. Olympia. Like I knew that was all way past, and I wasn't as crazy then. Like I was like starving, and I was doing it because I was disciplined, and I knew that I was going to finish this show, not necessarily because I wanted to. So when I transitioned out, I was really okay with it. And then it's just like, there's less pressure. That's for sure. We talked about that when I go to the gym. Like I don't feel the need to have to improve. Where I feel anything right now, where I'm having trouble letting go, is I know that I still look really good right now. And I know that is probably never going to happen again. So I'm trying to hold on to it as long as I can. I take a million pictures right now. My wife still says, why are you taking like progress pictures? Like, because I'm not going to look like this. I'm still in the rebound. I'm still got to like, obviously the gear came way down, but it's still not TRT. So I know it very soon I'm going to go just TRT, and that carries a certain look that's not full-blown trend and all that and all that with the look. So I'm trying to get as much evidence via photos that I can, and hold on to it as long as I can. That's about the only pressure of bodybuilding that I feel right now, is just because I know that it's not like, if you let it go, okay, next year you can run a cycle and the diet. No, that's done. You're all done fucking around with the heavy drug use, because that had a lot to do with why I retired. You know what? And I'm sure we'll talk about it now, is the reason I made that decision was like a few different things. It was one, because it's the pro ranks and I don't have the genetics to do anything. I don't care how committed I am to my prep and bodybuilding, I would still lose at that level. There are guys that can do half the amount of work and still demolish me at that. So what's the point? And two, I've been heavily drugged up for like a decade. Like, not like, oh, this guy's intermediate 500 test, 400 deca. Like, no, like when people online ask advice about their cycles, I ask, is that weekly or daily? You're asking. And then they're like, what? I'm like, okay, so that's like where I've been. But I also have respect for those drugs. I have respect for all of our friends that have died, prior, that didn't make it. So it's like, and I also understand the fact that sort of stuff comes when age comes into factor. Maybe not 35, but it could. A couple of them were really young, but like you're not 25 anymore. So it was a combination of just respecting that, which also means that I have to respect in retirement that TRT is all that's needed. That doesn't mean the summer's come and get on trend. Now we're back to bodybuilding again. You know what I mean? Because now you're using drugs again. So it's a lot of that came into play, but it was really it wasn't as bad as a transition. I'm sure it'll get easier. I'm still like reading boxes a little bit, but my food is structured during the week and even on the weekend a little bit. But I like when I say free meals, like I'll go out, I might go to a restaurant like 3 or 4 times on the weekend. And the reason why is I don't like the word cheat meal, and I stopped liking it at the end, because what cheat meal means is that it's restrictive eating. Basically says you can eat whatever you want on, say, Saturday night. But what happens if my family wanted to eat something on Thursday night? You're never going to eat again ever on Thursday night. You're just going to eat bodybuilding food on Thursday night. And now I do believe that all had to play when you're a competitive bodybuilder, whether it's off season or in season. But now that I'm not, that's like eating disorder mentality, or like words to use. It just, you get to assess where you're at. If my family is eating on a Thursday, I should be able to eat with them. That doesn't mean that you maybe then don't eat on Friday or something. If just like make the exchange. So I just like, as time went on, I just didn't want to be put in a box as much. And maybe the bodybuilders that are watching this might think that's crazy because they're not there yet. Trust me, I was the same dude. I was the same crazy guy who was sit it with the Tupperware. Joe probably does it now at Christmas dinner, and there's a time and place for that, that you need to. But you also, it's okay to change your mindset or passion, as you get older and move on to new things. So, my son's wrestling took a lot of, and I coach football now with him too, but those activities took a lot of the place. Like I said, I still go to the gym after practice. But my focus is, using the bodybuilding and the lessons that he watched since he was born to get him in the right mindset, the right work ethic towards his sports. People ask me all the time, do you want him to bodybuild? No, I don't. But he also wrestles, and that's an individual sport as well. So the lessons that go in terms of like how much you put in, how much you practice, how good do you want to be, that all I think draws a parallel from bodybuilding. And so I believe that he's at an advantage because he watched that, and throughout his whole lifetime at least.
Garrett, we're always in that think big bodybuilding group talking shit to Gary and I keep it real in there about drugs and doses and stuff, because some of these guys, man, they get on there talking like 300 mgs of test is enough to like turn pro, and it's like, man, unless you're gifted, you'll know it pretty quick, but that's not really the story. And by no means am I trying to push people into doing more gear, but it does come with the territory. The bigger you get as you age, like you got to up the ante a little bit if you want to keep going. So it's hard because on one hand, you don't want to talk numbers and push people, give people ideas, because that's all a number does. But on the other, I was always wondering coming up, like, man, what's so and so doing, or what are guys doing? And now, once you've been in it enough and you talk to people, like, no one's real. I've never heard anything super exotic outside of like a Nasser protocol or some of the guys from the 90s. But
yeah, I probably come off like a dick to those guys, but the real reason that like is because most of those guys aren't competitors.
Yeah.
And they're so fucking overly neurotic about everything. And trust me, I've been that guy and know how it consumes your life, and it doesn't. I could look at their genetics and I know that doing that is not going to do anything. So I'm like, why are you being like that? You guys are just being like nerds, about the whole thing. And I think you should be both hardworking and smart about what you do, but one can't outweigh the other. And these guys really, obviously, they're not in the inner circles of like big time bodybuilders, so they don't know the dosages. There are some real deal dosages out there, and most people lie. I don't think it's this like Nasser level, because Nasser was crazy, and like they also had less information. That they didn't have the internet, so Nasser was just doing like 10 anadrol a day. I don't think there's people doing that, but there's probably people doing 4 or 5 for sure. But they'll never tell you that. They'll tell you, I only needed 50. Why do they do that? Because if something bad happens, they go down. They don't want it to hit the internet. This guy did 3,000 tests, 1,000 trend, and 30 IUs of growth, and look what happened. And then it falls back on his coach. Then somebody finds an email, and then the whole fucking thing blows up. So it's easier for them to lie the other way and say, if you can't turn pro on 750 tests, then you don't belong in bodybuilding. Well, then everybody doesn't belong in bodybuilding besides Andrew Jacked. Okay, so it's like I don't buy into that. And then when you get like on the inner circle with some of these dudes, and then you realize that they're running like a whole bottle of Serostim in the morning, and you're like, that's not what you wrote on that forum when you said it was 6 IUs. So it was like
2 and 2.
Yeah,
I feel like a big part of that too. One, because of like almost like the risk or the health repercussions after. But I swear, man, there's a lot of people I think that get off on the internet saying that they're using a third of what they really are, so that we all look at them and think, man, these guys are at another level. Like, fuck, I would never look like that, only taking that much. So I almost think it's like these guys get off on thinking that, or making everybody else think that they are more gifted than what they really are, and it's not as ugly as it is for the rest of us behind the scenes. That's
exactly right. Is they want to look like they were really blessed, and that's why we should revere them. And it's like, I get it, and there's a lot of different layers to it. If they say that, then the other guys don't follow and do a lot of gear, because they probably shouldn't be doing a lot of gear. No one thinks that those average genetic guys should just go pump 4,000 tests because they heard so and so is doing it, because it might make them a little bit better. It'll probably kill them in the process. We don't want to see something bad happen to this guy for absolutely nothing. It's not like they're going to be a champion at that. But then it also annoys me that they're like, they're doing 150 tests a week and 300 masteron, and then like they're worrying about like their elbow path in the fucking lat pull down. Like, bro, this is the whole other side of the spectrum. That's not good. And then I like to like in person, so I don't write it, but I'm like real with some of like the young kids. Like if they ask me what I take, I say, you want to know what I did in the last 2 weeks before the prep? And I'll give them numbers, and they're like, what? And I'm like, welcome to bodybuilding. And you should assess if you want to do this, because now you just had the real numbers there. I almost want to scare them away, because they see me in the gym. They know I look impressive. And now here's your tangible evidence to what that physique that walks around looks like to do. If they all say, if I could just get to your level, well, here you go.
Yeah.
That, who was the first person I heard say that? Frank McGrath used to hate when people say, Frank, if I could just get to your level. He goes, what do you mean just get to my level? Like, dude, that's a fucking insult. And I wrote about this on Instagram. I know that they don't mean it that way, because they're like compared to, say, maybe Jay Cutler, which is another level up. But it's like, this guy's still a pro bodybuilder. He's still larger than life. And you're basically saying, if I could just get to your level, like you could sneeze and accidentally end up as Frank McGrath. This guy worked his whole life the last 20 years to look like that. So it's like, I know that they mean well, but people should really understand how they're phrasing shit.
I remember you said this to a kid one time. I think it might have been at an expo, and he said something along those lines to you, like, man, like I don't think I'll ever be Mr. Olympia, but if I could just get to how you look, Gary, like, I'd be so happy, I'd be pleased or something. And you looked at the kid and you go, if you could just get to my level, you were like, buddy, I do unspeakable things to look like this.
I probably used that exact word.
Yeah.
Yeah, they like I said, he's basically saying, you look good, I want to look like you, but
Yeah, you look attainable. Yeah.
Yeah, you look oh man, we had a few good times at these expos. Or remember the gym when the guy goes to, are you getting ready for the show?
Yes,
Tommy will love this.
remember.
Tommy will love this story. Me and Joe were working a table at a gym in New Jersey. It was an event, and I just finished working out, so I was in a stringer, and the guy comes in and goes, "Hey, you getting ready for the show?" I said, "What show?" I was in the off season. I go, "What show?" And he goes, "The Olympia." And I got, thankfully Joe was right there, because Joe just like looked his head up and he was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me. You didn't just say that to him right now." And I was like, "No, I'm an amateur." And I'm trying to keep a straight face and be like focused and like professional with this guy to like, not laugh in his face. I know Joe's like beaming at me right now because he's trying to figure out how I'm going to answer this with a straight face. And I'm like, "No, I'm very amateur and I usually lose at the amateur level a lot, let alone the Olympia." But
The whole
thank you.
time I'm just thinking, man, I'm never going to hear the end of this story.
He goes, "You just blew this guy's head up through the freaking roof right now."
It's good shit. So aside from drugs, Gary, what is this podcast, this particular segment's for the love of the game. So what are some words you would use to describe your bodybuilding career? Like if you're looking back on it, reflecting.
Resiliency and grit is how I would categorize it. It was like a day in and day out struggle. In the beginning, especially just because it was like, I lost a lot of shows in the beginning. Started winning more as at the end, but then you move up to the next level because you should always challenge yourself, and suddenly you become a small fish in a big pond again. You get, you're kicked in the mouth again, at the pro qualifier levels. And it's just really like, something I always tell my son is, if you lose, you just got to go back to the gym on Monday for him, and you go back to the mat on Monday. So it's like nothing really ever came easy for me. So it required a lot of like scratching and clawing, a lot of uncertainty of like not knowing would I ever be able to do it. I knew I had a good physique, like walking around the gym. Like most people thought I was pro physique wise that were in a tank top, but to get to that level, like, when you come back home and you're like, "Nah, I took 7th." People are like, "There's 6 other guys that beat you." I'm like, "Yeah, you just don't understand what the field looks like out there." But yeah, resiliency of like, just like getting beaten, coming back, not giving up. And I think that, like I said, Joe was there, but I think that's why the people reacted the way that they did. It wasn't because I was friends with everybody. Some of those people I didn't know. But it was just because of like the grit that it took to get that to the end and then finally do it. I mean, like I told my son, I'm like, "Dude, there are guys that turn pro that people just go like a golf clap because you knew this dude was going to walk through this show." I mean, like when Derek, not to take away Derek Lunsford, this is his example, or Carlos Thomas was a perfect example. We knew he was going to win that show when he turned pro.
Yeah.
It was a matter of like, dude, those guys were winning pro. Well, Derek won his pro show a week later. He won the Tampa Pro. So it was like it's not that it's not great. It's just we knew it. It wasn't like cataclysmic where like we thought like Derek ever had to really be like, he wasn't resisted on the way to winning his pro card. It was pretty smooth sailing. So the resistance builds a lot. It builds a lot into the story. But again, it teaches you to keep going. And how many guys, didn't, that were close or, that with that sort of thing. So I think that the resiliency would be the big thing. That and consistency. Just because I've only screwed up one meal in contest prep in 13 years of competing. And I was in 2012. I was 10 weeks out of the Atlantic States, and I fell asleep after meal 5 and slept through the whole night. So I missed meal 6. That was the only time I've ever missed it. So I try to tell people that the consistency is what gets it, and consistency over years, consistency over, not that you guys need to know this, but like that sort of thing of you just do it for a long time. It might happen sooner for some people, but it might take longer for others. So consistency.
Yeah, we had Kate on, and he picked out a meal that he missed. What was it, like 08, that a fucking turtle that fell into like a snapping turtle that he picked up on the side of the road, and he had it in his car. And then another one was like it fell on a prison floor that he was working in the jail, and he still ate it off the floor. But
I've done that.
that
Off of Polly Jim's floor. I rinsed it off with water. It was fucking cold tilapia.
That is the level of, like, you know, everybody has their own perception of what dedication is. I've learned that coaching others. And for guys that want to take it to I've always wanted the extreme, you know, every extreme I could leverage is what I want to do. That's been my personal mission. And then I work with people who they have no interest in that, man. Like,
that's the hardest thing coaching for me is, like, you know, when we get to that crossroads with a client, right, where he gives me an excuse and it's time for me to be a real coach, like a real mindset coach at that point, not even like a chicken and rice prescriber. You know, it's more of like me saying, how good do you want to be? And then I got to use myself as an example. And it sounds like I'm gloating. It sounds like I'm being some arrogant prick. Like, I'd never do that. Why wouldn't you do it like me? But I'm the example. So it's like, then I got to tell him about the time I left a funeral to go train. And, you know, and then the time I sat all the weddings with the food and everything like that. And it's like, you sound kind of like from your ivory tower or your soapbox when you're talking to these people, but you're providing them the blueprint that if you want to be good, if you want to be like me, like you say you do, then this is what you have to do. And suddenly they usually don't come back after that. Usually they last about another month and they're like, Mr. Check-in, like, you know, that sort of thing. But like, it's like, then you have people who say, dude, if you want to retain clients, you got to take it easy on them and you can't treat them like that. And I'm like, bro, that's like me saying, like, the kids on the football team that don't like hustle on their laps, that we could just be like, just let them go. No, fucking scream at them, man. You know, they'll fall in line. You know, it's just, I don't know. That's, I don't want to say that. I don't want to put that on like modern society, because I'm sure that shit happened, you know, in our generation past, you know, that people just don't want to work. And, you know, we see great genetic guys that you run into those issues that they can't even adhere to a diet, but where they're not even tough, you know, when things get tough, because we know the starving comes, the fatigue happens. And at some point, there's no way around it. You just got to be tough. And the answer is to be tough. And that's, some people just can't do it. I don't care how great of shape you have or like that. We've watched a lot of bodybuilders that never fulfilled even close to their potential because they weren't tough about this stuff.
Yeah, I would venture to say there is a large amount of bodybuilders that cheat on their diet, knowingly and unknowingly. But
I didn't even think that.
It's a lot higher.
Dude, I said the same thing. Tommy and I spoke last night. We recorded a show and then talked after. And we're talking about some different bodybuilders, why maybe they didn't look like they nailed it or whatever the case is. And I mentioned a couple of different guys. And Tommy right away, both, you know, two guys back to back. And it's like, he was like, oh, well, he cheats on his diet. I know the coach and he cheats on the diet. And Gary, I'm with you, dude. I respond, like the response, like I was just mind blown. Like, cause I don't look at other guys and even consider that as a variable. Like, I don't look at other guys.
I just look at they screwed something up bodybuilding wise. Like, they didn't get their estrogen low enough or something like that. And it's like, dude, what do you mean they had cheesecake? It's like, and they're a pro, like a good pro. And it's like, you know, that I didn't, when I learned how to bodybuild, I assumed that everyone was crazy. And that's how I fell in line. Well, you're going to have to be like this too. And then you find out that you're actually the outlier and most people cheat and they think they can get away with it. And some can, but until they get to the top level. And then it's like, well, you guys, genetics is all so good that no one could cheat at this point. But it's like, I just didn't, that's what I came up believing. I know that I was ignorant and naive, but it actually worked out in my favor.
Yeah. Any words for 21-year-old Gary Turner looking back on it?
Don't barbell bench, because the week before my 21st birthday is when I tore my pec.
Okay.
Don't flat barbell bench. I remember showing up to the bar on my 21st birthday with an entire bruise down my arm because my whole pec was ripped over. But it's hard to give myself advice then because it worked out, you know what I mean, for what it was. But then like if I like right now I want to say have more balance in the off season, but if I say that, then does that mean that I don't end up in the same spot? I don't know. You know, I was very unbalanced. Probably. I was very unbalanced in the off season. When I say that, I mean my off season, even though people see me blow up to 300, that doesn't mean that I was eating pizzas like every meal. I was eating just heavy duty bodybuilding food, probably taking too much insulin as well. But like, and I was just eating way too much in the caloric surplus of bodybuilding food, you know, whether it be steak and, you know, a ton of rice and doing not a lot of cardio to get that way. But I still was like, you know, preparing meals. And I wasn't fucking around. I was still taking only one cheat meal a week. So it wasn't like it was a free for all. But by the time I got to prep, it felt like I was already in prep in the off season. So I felt like I prepped for like 10 years. So there was never like I always use Kevin Jordan as an example because I know he relaxes. He's got the genetics, way different genetics than me, but like he'll eat like Oreos and like one chicken meal, like the whole day. And then he'll like, now we got to get ready for the show. And then he dials it in. And it's like I feel like I was trying to dial it in 365 because my genetics were way worse. However, your mind goes crazy at that point. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, and then right after the show, like my best day was always the Sunday after the show because, you know, you could free eat on that day and it's fine. But I would always be the point where it's like, well, you got to keep your glutes semi-tight in this off season. So you only get a couple days and then you're back on the horse. And it's like, suddenly you're back to bodybuilding again. So that like didn't happen in this, obviously, when I retired, but it's very hard to keep good balance in the off season, but it's hard for me to recommend it to people and not sound like a hypocrite when I didn't do it because I was a success at the end with the pro card. And maybe I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't do that, but it was tough. You know, it's like kind of like I don't know. It's either way. I guess it's like kind of like if I was recommending it to somebody, I would really have to see where they were and what their genetics looked like. You know, I was close in the last, like, say 4 years, maybe not like second place, but like I had the look. Whereas if somebody was like so far out in left field and to tell them like, listen, man, you got to be fully 100, you know, no balance in the off season. That could be like really detrimental to that person when in reality, they have no shot. So it's like, I think you would have to go on and assess that, you know, individually.
Yeah. I don't think I honestly believe once you're as far established into a game or an industry or a whatever as you are, then you can kind of like, I mean, there's always going to be that underlying pressure of I want to continue to make progress and get better, but it takes those years of just being like, I mean, you're like a robot. I know there's like, I don't really know the span or the amount of days or years where I can't tell you a meal that I missed. If anything, I would eat my meals and then a free meal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I still got all 6 meals in, sometimes 7, and that might be a free meal or just depends on how late I was up. But I don't think, I mean, other than, like you said, the Carlos Turners and the Derek Lunsfords, like I believe Derek Lunsford probably turned pro eating 5 meals a day regardless. I don't think, now that may have been hard for him, but I still think there were a lot of days where that was hard for him and that he just had to choke it down. You know, so it's hard for me to tell anyone anything other than, yeah, dude, you're not fucking psycho enough for this sport, you know, because that's what it's down to.
Yeah. You know, it is like definitely
fucked up shit demons in your closet for this sport. I promise you. You know what I mean?
I think too, there's way more people at this point, not to like shit on younger generations or anything, but I don't think there's many guys that you have to tell to take their foot off the gas. Like, I think if anything, there's more people that you need to tell them like, hey, motherfucker, like you came to me with some big time goals and a lot of talk, like the actions are not backing it.
What you need to do is tell them to stay out of the gym more. That's the only time the gas is that, you know, these kids, they come for 3 hours. Obviously, they're not training for 3 hours. They're fucking about. That's probably the only thing that you need to tell them that you need to chill out with that. because you're hurting yourself. You're not progressing. But yeah, they want everything. They want to be everything at like 50%. You know what I mean? Like that. We see it. How many kids with the expensive clothes and everything like that? That's more important. That's where this fashion of this industry is the reason why half these dudes are in the gym to begin with. But again, that's why I like to be real with them, because if you're going to get into it, you need to know how real this is. Like, they'll tell me, I'm on cycle right now. I say, oh, yeah, how many shots did you do today? And they go, what do you mean, how many? I said, well, if you get to a certain level, you're going to have to split that up from 3 cc's. How many GH shots did you do today? You know, before your show, you plan on doing any Nolatil or anything? Because that's going to be in each body part. Like, what? I'm like, welcome to bodybuilding again. And again, not everybody does that, but I'm just saying, like Turner said, you got to be a little crazy. You know, we were doing some crazy shit that like wasn't like that. Like, you know, you're smart guys in the industry. If they heard this, if I told Chris Tuttle what I was doing, he would be like, guy, you're playing with fire there.
He's that example you were using earlier, where he loves to say, guy, if you aren't winning pro shows on 700 milligrams of test, then bodybuilding isn't for you. That's
I love Tuttle, but he would say that exactly to your face. And here I am like fucking on double that. Like, I'm still not winning the pro card. I'm like, I should give up now.
Gary, I got a question.
Sure.
So, you know, you post the things, maybe like your son's highlight reel, or how you're passionate about what he's doing and how you're helping and things like that. Like, did you have someone in your life that was kind of that guy for you that made you so passionate or so like determined to make this happen? Or like, what does that stem from with you to go 15 years, get your teeth kicked in back to back to back to back? You know, like what happened in life, or who was that guy in your life that was like, you're on the right path, dude, just keep it up?
I didn't, my dad was always supportive, but not like this. Like, the real people ask me, like, were you like with the work ethic and the consistency, like in sports? I played baseball, football, wrestling, and the answer is no, I wasn't like that. I definitely didn't lift weights in high school. The reason I got this way is because I realized really quickly in the bodybuilding industry that I wasn't going to be taken seriously. This was like, I started getting like really ripped on the forums. Remember all those crazy forums on Get Big and everything? And I was like, this is talking more towards, well, it was in the early days. And then of course the Matt Porter era, like when I was at Matt Porter, like around 2015 and stuff like that, I was just like a constant, like getting beat down on forums from like various people. I had posts thrown up on, at post show, my pictures just get torched by like the minions, and people watchers probably could figure out who I'm talking about. I won't drop names, but it was just, there's two ways you could have went there. You could have went like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be part of this industry. Or it's like, I'm going to show these motherfuckers. And I used that as motivation in the beginning. I used all that negativity to like, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show my coaches that I'm worth a damn, that you should put some investment into me. And how did I show that? It wasn't with my physique at the time, because I wasn't that good. It was, I'm going to show you how hard I can work. And the first prep with Matt Porter was absolutely insane. I mean, at 12 weeks out, I was on 50 grams of carbs, and he had me at the gym 4 times a day, three hit cardio sessions and a separate training session. And he goes, I don't even know how you're standing up. And that's when I started to get his respect. And that's what I was going for. Yeah. So in the beginning, it was very much like fed off of negativity. Then I got my physique to a certain level where those messages stopped coming, and it more started to be like, dude, you're legit, or you're big, or something like that. And then I started to want to prove the supporters correct. And then it became more of a positive experience towards the end with that. So the work ethic, I really established myself as like that dude. I realized that early on that I wasn't going to market myself as the best physique or Mr. Olympia. That ship sailed pretty early on. At the beginning, I thought it was. And then I realized, well, maybe you can market yourself as being the really hard, gritty guy with the captions, like Animal and stuff like that, and live that way. And that's where that started all happening. I kind of just picked it up with my son, because I kind of noticed that he was a little different on the wrestling mat with his mindset. And that was both, because his personality. I mean, Joe knows him, he's pretty like he's a focused kid on the sport. He's very passionate the same way. He's really into whatever he's doing. And now, of course, the skills are catching up because he's at practice all the time. That's the one thing. He's like the same way. Every practice is a brick on the wall. Whoever's wall's built the highest is going to win this match. So that I'm kind of riding with that. Of course, I like making the reels and stuff like that. That I'd rather post that stuff than my physique pictures now. But and then I just see opportunities with that for him. You know, I didn't even with like marketing, so to speak, or like recruitment. I know he's only 8 and it's years from high school and stuff like that, but we didn't have that back in the day. Like you just like had to be like really good at your sport and like scouts had to show up. Now we know with social media, like you could do all this on your own and you can like, and these guys could know you. I mean, there's high school coaches that are not just in town, but like far away that know Lucas. And he's just an 8-year-old. He's not a prodigy. He's just the visibility on social media is pretty good. So I kind of ride with that. And of course, you know, the bodybuilding and wrestling, the parallels are so close because they're individual sports. So I figure, well, what my expertise so far can help him. And I do feel that there's like a responsibility to do that because we know that most fathers aren't pro bodybuilders or had a career like this or even in athletics at all. I feel that they're at a disadvantage with their children unless their kids are just so athletically gifted. Right. You know, I feel that that's the extra push right there.
I love it. That's awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, man. That's awesome.
And honestly, being a close friend and seeing it all unfold, there isn't anybody that's been around you or around Lucas that could possibly say that you've been nothing but an enormous positive influence on him. Like seeing him, you know, I remember, you know, when he first started wrestling, first started playing football, some of the feedback, some of the videos, even compared to the person that you've built him into at this point, seeing the videos, seeing the aggression and like his mentality as a wrestler and as an athlete. I've said this to you privately, but in this conversation, I want to point out, like, you are setting him up for a better chance at being successful in life across the board by teaching him these things now. And the big one that I see from you teaching him is the delayed gratification. And that is going to set him so far beyond the kids of his generation. Each generation of kids becomes more and more impatient. They put in a little work and they want to see a reward right away. And the people we know in every walk of life, we know that the people that can delay that and can put the work in, and then cash in later, those are the people that win big. So that's going to just set him up. Him having that mentality and seeing right now, okay, every day I lay a brick and then my wall is highest at the end, is maybe better than anything any other parent could do for their child.
Yeah. You know, it's like, well, and that was the first thing. I mean, I posted a video that somebody took of me talking to Lucas backstage right after I got off stage. And I said, that was 14 years of training right there. You know, you've seen most of it. And I said the same, I said in the video, I said, you might not win the wrestling match today, but if you keep going, there might be something bigger for you at the end, whether if you lost the state finals, but there might be a national title for you, you know, 5 years past that. So, you know, it's just to keep going with it. And yeah, it's not to knock other parents. They just don't know. And I do know. So it's like, I want to use that as the advantage. We all want our kid to get to the top. So why would you not use all the advantages that you can that are within your expertise with that? And, you know, they all grow, you know. Yeah, Joe, you saw him on his like first day of wrestling practice. And it was like, we've had many conversations after tournaments where he went 0-3 as a 6-year-old. And we're like, bro, I don't know if this is going to go too well. But he was always the kind of kid who always would show back up on Monday, you know, and he'd be ready to go. He'd cry. He'd still cry if he lost right now. It'd be a freaking nightmare, but he'll always show back up. And now it's starting to, like, you know, take form. And every year it'll, you know, take form there. And I always kind of, you know, with the bodybuilding, wanted to look a certain way at the field because it promotes a certain message. When you guys are all big guys, so you know when you show up at a public place, you stand out, you carry up, you give off a certain message when you come out. And the same thing is when I go to the football field, or the wrestling mat is I'm sending, this is what I'm about, physically. This is my son. He's a big kid too. You see, he's wrestling aggressively right now. I mean, the writing's on the wall right there. Do I think eventually I'm sure he's trained before, but I'm sure when he's 13, he's going to find his way to the gym for like serious lifting. And then that's going to level him up, because I do believe that he'll be a wrestling technician by that point. At that point, then once the gym hits in, once puberty hits in, and then before you know it, you have like a muscle man on the mat. And why did that happen? Most of these kids don't find the gym like that because their dads are regular dudes. Yeah. So it's like this kid was posing at 2 years old, like in his diaper. So it's like, it's just kind of instilled in there. That's why I think right when we hit like the 12, 13-year-old mark is when it's going to like spring off. And it's environmental.
Yeah. Well, that, and he's got the advantage of being conceived while you were on cycle. So I'm convinced there's something to that. He's going to have those epigenetics to be a fucking killer.
I remember sending you some pictures or some like videos or whatever of like Lucas going crazy. I swear to God, there's got to be some kind of transfer of that trend that you were on when you somehow conceived him, and it kind of embedded in the DNA, and it could. I mean, like he's much bigger than I was. Let's put it this way. He weighs 89 pounds right now. I wrestled 85 in 7th grade. He's going to 3rd. And I was not like the string bean kid. I was like the skinny kid with like the gut who looked horrible. I didn't look good in a singlet. I was just kind of like out of shape, but still skinny at the same time. So he's over 4'8" right now. He's like, I feel like he's going to be Melissa's height by next year. Yeah. And it's like, where does this come from? Is there some sort of transfer from the thing that we don't know about that, like, we maybe haven't studied it long enough, So it's like, I don't know.
We're over an hour. So 2 quick ones for you. Right, quick answers. Okay. First thing that comes to mind. Best advice that somebody's ever given you.
Keep going.
Worst advice somebody's ever given you.
I don't know.
What's the worst drug advice someone's ever given you?
Oh, okay. All right, there you go. The worst drug advice was after my first show, when we all know the first show, you blow up the weight real bad, eating like whatever. I was up like 30 pounds like in 2 days. And I remember, and my ankles were swollen and stuff. And do you remember Kenny Jones from back in the day? Kenny Jones was like an 80s bodybuilder, a little small guy, kind of wacky. He was at a Pollen gym and he looks at me and goes, take T3. He says, basically, I had already like tapered down the T3, but he says to blast T3 again so that I hyperact everything and get rid of all the water weight. And I just looked at him like, that's not the answer. And that was probably the worst drug advice I've gotten. I never had really bad drug advice besides that. Like I never like had somebody tell me take DMP. I've never even seen DMP before, or like somebody do like outrageously high stuff. I've had people recommend.
I was going to ask if the worst advice ever was the 3 Baconators right before you went on stage.
Oh, okay, yeah. That was bad. Even worse than that, I had the same coach had me carb up with a remember Devil's Food Cake, like Entenmann's cake. It was the chocolate cake with the vanilla top. It's great. I had to eat half a cake before going on stage. I had to eat half. So the competitors were back. So like the figure girls were back there like, you get to carb up with that? You're lucky. I'm like, I know. I'm like, as I'm like watching this show just like fade away right there. It was just, that I remember 6 weeks out of my first show. It wasn't even bad advice. It was needed, but 6 weeks out of my first show, I always laugh because these new kids, they're very organized with their coaches. Like coaches are very common now. We didn't have that back in the day. My coach he would just like randomly see me at the gym, like, oh yeah, I got to take a look at you, as like random weeks, 3 weeks between the check-ins. So I would pose for him and he'd go, I remember 6 weeks out of my first show, he went, oh boy. So he cut all my food down to tilapia and greens six times a day. And then I had to do 75 minutes of Stairmaster twice a day. And that we just hoped to God that we got there. And I was like acceptable, like on stage, like that's when there was 26 light heavyweights at the Atlantic States, and I got cooked, and I still had a great day though. I left the day, family was there. You complete the prep. And I
Yeah.
tell still some of the young kids that are unsure about doing it, and that are giving me excuses like, oh, I don't think I'm ready. I don't look like these guys. I'm like, you're looking at Instagram too much, man. Just get up there. And if you're in decent shape, do the true novice division. Just see if you even fucking like it. Because you
Yeah.
might be like this, make it to the end. You're like, this is the stupidest thing ever. Well, now you know.
Yeah.
Because it's like all these guys nowadays have Instagram, so they expect to look like Chris Bumstead. I'm like, it's not going to happen on your first time. It might not, probably won't ever happen, but you can't wait till that. That's like saying I'm going to wait to get my driver's license until I'm a NASCAR driver. Like until I could drive a NASCAR. No, get your driver's license like a normal person first, man. Like,
Yeah.
and then work from there.
Yeah. All that's good stuff. I'm sure as the people can tell, and as I know, we could get you talking all day. We'll have to have you come back on.
Yeah.
Always appreciate talking to you, hearing your perspective, especially after the season that you just had. But I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. So for Tommy Stiles, Turner Riddle, Gary G6 Turner, this was For the Love of the Game. And until next time, guys, we are out.